informs him that the school doesn't allow it. They soon arrive at the arena and gather around their instructor, who starts off the lesson by telling them about the two different types of saviors, the Shurigane, who use light arts, and the Kuroma, who use dark arts. He informs them that they would begin their training by learning how to use the light arts, and showed them an example by summoning his prana, which covers his body in a suit. The students were amazed by this and asked what it was, so he explained that he had manifested his prana, which was the power source of the light arts. He tells them that since they each had memories of their past life, they simply had to instinctively draw out their prana from there. Excited, they all gave it a try but ended up struggling until Satsuki did hers with ease. Moroha was struggling with manifesting his prana when Satsuki approached him and excitedly asked if he had seen her, but before he could respond, they heard a group of students discussing. One of the boys said he wished a metaphysical would appear and go on a rampage so they could be sent to fight it. Satsuki confronted them, saying they were a disgrace to saviors. So Jen, one of the boys, asked what right she had to speak to them in that way, and she said if they actually had functioning brains, they wouldn't have to ask such stupid questions. They eventually got into an argument, with each one of them throwing insults at the other. But Jen suddenly got pissed at something she'd said and manifested as prana. The teacher tried to stop them from fighting, but he said it would just be a practice match between two students. Before the match started, he pulled on his tag and it turned into a two-sided axe. Satsuki pulled on hers and it turned into a sword. Moroha was impressed by this, and Shizuno explained that if you channeled prana into the tags, they transformed into the weapons they had used in their past life. Amazed by this, he watched on, but was also worried about Satsuki. Satsuki kept attacking, but Jen easily dodged and taunted her for not being able to land a hit on him. She charged at him, and when he swung his axe at her, but she ducked out of the way, catching him off guard. Seeing the opening, she tried to attack him again, but he somehow disarmed her and called her a weakling, and as she tried to go pick up her sword, he used his axe to slash her back. Fortunately, he had only cut her clothes, and as she sat holding herself in shame, he laughed and mocked her, but Moroha came and placed his jacket on her, completely covering her exposed back. The teacher came up to them and told Jen to stop with his taunting, so Jen apologized but said Satsuki was a weakling who couldn't defend herself. After hearing his words, she got up and ran out of the stadium. In a cafe somewhere in the town, Moroha tried to cheer up a depressed Satsuki, but his words didn't have any effect on her, so he listened as she spoke of her childhood. She reveals that because her town was always attacked by metaphysicals, she had moved around a lot, which was why she didn't know how to make friends. But because she had Surish's memories and got to see Fraga in her dreams, she didn't really feel lonely. The test soon revealed she was a savior, and this made her happy, because she knew she would have the opportunity to reunite with Fraga. She admitted that saving the world and upholding justice did not matter to her as much as proving herself before him was, but she had been humiliated after picking a fight which she lost. She begged him to scold her for her mistake, just as he had done in the past, but Moroha said nothing. Just then, Shizuno, who they hadn't even noticed was sitting beside Satsuki, volunteered to do the scolding. A surprised Satsuki accused Moroha of inviting her, but he immediately denied it. Shizuno didn't seem bothered by her outburst and sat eating her fries happily, but when Moroha joined her, Satsuki lost her cool and demanded she leave. Shizuno completely ignored her and walked up to Moroha, placing his face in her massive plots, and then asked if her behavior was that of a loose woman, but he was unable to respond. Satsuki was so jealous that she called them all sorts of names. She asked if Shizuno wasn't ashamed of using her oversized plots to seduce an innocent boy, but Shizuno claimed an underage loli like her didn't have the right to speak to her. Satsuki refused to back down, so eventually Shizuno apologized and let go of Moroha, and immediately Satsuki grabbed him and put his face on her chest. She asked how he felt, and he said it was like he was being dragged through a bed of tiny pebbles, which made her run off crying. As they watched her go, Moroha thanked Shizuno for making her feel better, and she left. That evening at the school arena, Moroha confronted Jen and demanded he apologize to Satsuki, but he challenged him to a match instead and said he would only apologize if Moroha could hit him once. While Moroha picked out a weapon, Jen manifested his prana and pulled out his axe and attacked him. Meanwhile, Satsuki had just stepped out of the shower when Shizuno barged into her room and told her that Moroha was in trouble, so she immediately ran out without clothes and headed to the stadium. Back at the arena, Moroha was losing to Jen, who created illusions of himself using a skill called celerity, and attacked him from behind. Moroha blocked with his sword but was thrown across the floor, and that was when Shizuno and Satsuki got to the stadium. Jen noticed her and said he would finish what he had started with her when he had taken care of Moroha. Enraged by his words, Moroha attacked him again, but it was no use since he wasn't strong enough. As they watched them fight, Satsuki lost hope that Moroha would win, but Shizuno told her that since he was fighting for her honor, She owed it to him to watch till the end. Morowa's sword soon flew out of his hands, so he ran to pick it, but Jen stepped on his hand. Lying helpless on the floor, he suddenly remembered his past life where Surish had told him that she believed in him because he was the guardian of the Holy Sword, the ultimate swordsman. In the present, Satsuki repeated the same words and said she would kiss him if he won, and that seemed to trigger him, and he suddenly got up and channeled his prana into his tag. Jen was surprised by his sudden transformation and tried to fight back, but Morowa had gained the upper hand. He made use of celerity, which also surprised Jen, who had used 3 years to master the skill. Enraged that the cannon fodder weakling, who had just awakened his prana, was about to best him, he tried to strike, but Morowa stopped his axe with his sword and it cracked. Jen was then knocked out by the energy Morowa released, and overwhelmed by the amount of prana he just used, Morowa lost consciousness, but before he could hit the ground, Satsuki caught him. Meanwhile, the principal who had walked in during the fight referred to Morowa as the Ancient Dragon. A sleeping Morowa was woken by a kiss, but when he opened his eyes, he was met with the unfamiliar face of a young blonde girl who got off him and went to stand beside the principal, who informed him that the girl had used her mouth to send magic into his body to replace the prana he lost. When he asked if she had been the one who kissed him, she turned ketchup red and hid behind the principal. A sound drew his attention to the curtain, and when the principal pulled it open, he saw Satsuki gagged and tied. So the principal explained that she had tried to take advantage of him while he slept, so she put her on timeout. After sitting by his side, she told him that she had watched him fight and knew he was an ancient dragon, but the airhead was honestly baffled. She revealed that the Japanese branch of the Order of White Knights referred to ancient dragons as the oldest fallen hero. And going further, she explained that all saviors were reincarnations of a former life, but it was possible that some saviors had been reborn again, and they had 2 past lives. Morowa said he could barely remember his life as a warrior, and didn't sound happy about having to remember another life. The principal mentioned that had used a level 3 and stood up to leave, and the little girl told him that she could see that his riz would give him a lot of women problems, so he should be careful. After they left, from around the corner, the little girl watched their exchange and felt bad for Morowa, who was already having relationship problems even though he was very much single. Another day in their classroom, Satsuki asked Morowa to exchange numbers with her and celebrated gaining her 3rd contact, but Shizuno, who stood behind her, congratulated her for leveling up from being a complete lone. Girls began bickering like an old married couple. As they bickered on, a student came looking for Morowa and Shizuno. They followed him to the rooftop, where he told Morowa that he had been recommended by the principal to become a rank C. He admitted that he was also impressed with Morowa's skill because he had watched the fight in the arena. When he noticed Morowa looking at his name tag, he admitted that he was Jen's elder brother Jin. Moving on, he explained that as a rank C, Morowa would receive wages and an automatic job with the Order of the White Knights after his graduation. But if he became a rank C, he had to join the Strikers, an anti-metaphysical combat unit which he personally led. Jin asked Morowa to take his time and consider the offer, but Morowa was more interested in knowing how much he'd be paid if he accepted the offer, and after hearing the amount, he wasted no time in agreeing to the offer. Shizuno just shook her head and told Jin that she would also start coming for their training. Since Morowa looked confused, Jin explained that he had already approached her with the offer before, and as he was about leaving, Satsuki, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation, came forward and begged to join them too. However, Jin claimed she was a flat, powerless weakling, while Shizuno remarked that she was only capable of getting trashed by his brother. Jin excused himself, and Morowa noticed that Satsuki was about to cry and tried to talk to her, but she ran away saying she was fine and would make sure she became stronger so she could fight alongside him. Shizuno and Morowa attended their first training session with the Strikers, and as they watched them train, Shizuno told him that they were known as the Golden Generation, a name they earned because they had defeated more metaphysicals than anyone in the Japan branch. She also said that nearly all of them were rank B or higher, and Morowa wondered how he would cope with such a high-powered team. As they walked back home after training, they were met by Satsuki, who had been waiting for them. She invited them out to eat, but Shizuno declined, saying they were exhausted and needed to rest. When Morowa tried to protest because he didn't want to miss the opportunity to pig out on cheap food, she cut him off and said he was obligated to show up to training well rested. Satsuki apologized for being thoughtless and invited them to hang out on one of their free days before leaving. After she left, Morowa scolded Shizuno for her behavior towards Satsuki and then left. One morning, Satsuki called Shizuno and asked if she would like to hang out, but a sleepy Shizuno said she wasn't interested. So Satsuki reminded her that she agreed to go out on her free day, so she couldn't back out. They met at the mall, where Satsuki asked Shizuno to help her pick out a present for her brother. They spent the entire day looking for the perfect gift, but couldn't decide on what to get. They decided to rest on a bench, and Shizuno said that eating sugar was good after such a long day, hinting that she wanted Satsuki to buy some for her. After buying them, Satsuki saw two children who reminded her of her past life with Fraga. Suddenly, there was a crack in the ground, and out of a nearby fountain came a large metaphysical resembling a snake. Satsuki watched as it moved and noticed that Shizuno was frozen in shock. Not too far from her was one of the children she had seen earlier, but she was too scared to move. She felt helpless, but not wanting to look like a failure in front of her brother. She pushed her fears aside and manifested her prana. Quickly moving, she drew Shizuno's attention to the child and asked her to help him to safety while she challenged the creature. But Shizuno told her not to go alone because it was dangerous, so Satsuki assured her that she would only distract it long enough for people to safely leave the area. She got the creature's attention and attacked it head-on, managing to injure it a little, while Shizuno chanted a spell and used it to attack it too, before informing Satsuki that she had already contacted Morova and the strikers. Satsuki suggested she leave with the other choppers, but Shizuno reminded her that she was once the Netherworld sorceress, so she wasn't going anywhere. They managed to draw the creature into the empty mall, but as they attacked it, another one came out of the ground, and that's when they realized it was a multi-headed one. Petrification process. Still unable to move, a frustrated Satsuki called out Morova's name. At the same time, the school combat unit was trying to assess the situation when Morova walked in demanding to know how the situation was. Jin informed him that the situation was critical and that they had never seen a metaphysical with that many heads before. Morova tells them that they need to go help Shizuno and Satsuki, but Jin admits that they were not strong enough to confront the creature, and he could not take the risk. His words made Morova remember how his parents died, so he revealed that if they couldn't save their friends, how could they call themselves saviors? Back at the mall, Satsuki was trying to wake Shizuno up when one of the heads wrapped its tongue around her and tried to swallow her, but before it could, Morova made a dramatic entrance, easily slicing off the tongue. He took one look at the girls and was filled with rage. He attacked the creature, and when it looked like he would lose, Shizuno woke up and told him that he had another power. In that moment, Morova had a flashback of his former life and said he never forgives those who take from him. While he chanted a spell, he was swallowed by one of the heads, but when the spell was completed, he released it inside the creature's mouth, and it exploded. Morova emerged holding a glowing orb. When Satsuki wondered what it was, Shizuno said it was a level 5, Gehenna. Morova merged it with his sword and delivered the final blow and finally defeated the creature, causing the girls to move freely again as they watched him float down with admiration. The next day on the rooftop, Satsuki was shocked when Jin asked her to join the Strikers' reserve because he was impressed with the skills she had shown when she faced the metaphysical. He told Morova that he didn't regret his decision to not send the team to the mall, but also admitted that Morova hadn't made the wrong decision either. When he left, Satsuki was so happy that she didn't respond to Shizuno's jabs, since she was so excited. Morova used the opportunity to ask Shizuno if they had been together in his other former life, but she said they could talk about it another day and left. At a small cafe in town, Morova and the girls wondered why the principal told everyone that the three of them had defeated the metaphysical when it was only Morova who had done it. Morova said they also had a hand in bringing it down, but Satsuki argued that it was mostly him. Shizuno agreed, saying that the only other people who could have easily defeated the metaphysical were the head six, the top saviors in the Order of the White Knights, who were all rank S. A blonde-haired man walked into the cafe as they talked and tried to order a drink in English. Satsuki noticed the waitress struggling to understand him, so she went to help. She asked the man what he wanted in English, but when he replied to her in Japanese, which made her feel stupid for falling for his tricks, and called him a picky snub. Before she could lash out at him, Morova grabbed her and apologized for her behavior, while Shizuno guessed that he was British, so he called her smart for noticing right away. To make him pay, Satsuki personally placed his order herself. When he saw the drink, he was impressed, but immediately spat it out because it was spicy. He called it an abomination and an insult to tea, saying it was a declaration of war on this country. Morova offered to get a towel to clean the spill, so at the counter, the man asked if he had tasted the poor excuse for tea before, but when he turned to respond, he noticed the man was no longer standing next to his table. Morova noticed that things had slowed down and wondered if time had stopped, but realized the man was just moving too fast, and before he could react, the man stood in front of him and threw a punch, but stopped inches away from his face. The effect of the punch was a strong breeze that blew throughout the shop, but Morova didn't even flinch, which made the man ask if he hadn't moved because he couldn't, or because he didn't want to, but Morova just said that if he was planning to kill him, he'd already be dead. The man was so disappointed that he paid his bill and left. Satsuki wondered what had happened and asked who he was, so Shizuno revealed that he was Sir Edward Lampard, member of the Six Heads and the head of the British HQ. While changing clothes in the locker room, Satsuki told Shizuno that the gossip going around was that Sir Edward had come to do a full inspection of their academy. Shizuno said it was probably a ruse to observe Morova, because everyone had heard of him and every country wanted to get their hands on the oldest fallen hero. Satsuki praised Morova's skills and bragged about how everyone, including the stuck-up Sir Edward, would respect Morova when he became a rank S. But Shizuno didn't share the same views as her, because even though the rank S were powerful, they had no freedom and were always in constant danger. However, all Satsuki heard from her was that she wouldn't be able to hang out with Morova anymore, so she started complaining. And this made Shizuno wonder what it would be like to live life like the simple-minded pea-brained Satsuki. The girls soon met up with Morova, and together they headed to the arena. They were stopped by the blonde girl who had kissed Morova in the clinic, and she introduced herself as Maya Shinran. Satsuki asked what she was doing in the academy, since she was too young to be attending their classes, and she explained that she couldn't attend elementary school like other kids because she had awakened as a savior very early. So instead she spent her time at the academy with her sister Mary, who they knew as the principal. Morova figured out that Shizuno knew Maya, and she said it was because her brother was the academy's board chairman. In the arena, the instructor announced that they would be having a combined class between the first and second years. He asked for a volunteer to demonstrate the lesson, and an overconfident second year, who had introduced himself as Commate, stepped forward and challenged Morova because he had apparently taken the spotlight away from him, and he needed to improve his street credibility by beating him. From the stands, Maya cheered Morova on, while Shizuno's brother tried to convince Sir Edward to watch the match and witness the ancient dragon's strength firsthand. The match began, and Kame immediately used a level 2 spell called Blaze against Morova, who easily blocked it using magic resistance, which made Kame pissed. Morova then used a level 3 incinerating spell to blast him away, making him all nice and toasty. After leaving the arena, Morova went to see the principal but met Maya in the office instead, so he decided to wait for her. As he waited, Maya offered to tell him everything she knew about Shizuno and her brother, since that was why I had come to see her sister. She told him that Shizuno's grandfather was the one who financed the academy, and that her brother was also an executive at the Japan branch, but because he wanted to gain more influence, he planned on making Shizuno an executive too, which was why he had trained her to be a Kuroma and recommended her to the strikers. All these made Morova believe he was just using his sister as a tool to get everything he wanted. Later that day, Morova was taking a nap outside when Shizuno went to sit beside him. When he woke up, he realized he'd been dreaming about his other former life. He didn't realize that he was groping Shizuno until she made a sound, and he jumped away like his hands were on hot coal. He asked what she was doing there, and without shame, she said she was having her plots examined by him. After he apologized for his shameful behavior, he asked if she was the Netherworld sorceress, but she denied it, so he kept staring at her, which made her tell him to go ahead and kiss her, but he told her to get her mind out of the gutter. Elsewhere, Sir Edward was seated in his car, talking to his assistant about Morova's power. They didn't believe the principal's report about who defeated the multi-headed metaphysical, and Sir Edward claimed he'd need more time to access Morova to know what he was capable of. Later on, Shizuno's brother invited Morova to dinner at their place. During the dinner, Tadanori asked Morova if he knew the requirements for becoming a rank S candidate, and he said no. So Shizuno explained that one had to defeat a metaphysical unaided. Tadanori pointed out that Morova had already done that, but he said he had gotten help from Shizuno and Satsuki. Still trying to make Morova see his point, he told him that a little lie could make him the Japan branch's number 2, and all he had to do was admit he had defeated the metaphysical alone, and he'd become a rank S. Shizuno argued that doing that would cost Morova his freedom, but her brother cut her off, saying it was their family's decision. In her room, she apologized for her brother's behavior, and when he looked around the room, he observed that it looked lonely. So she explained that everything had been picked by her family, so she didn't have any personal effect there. As they spoke, she remembered her past life and got a bit emotional, but before he could ask what was wrong, she said she needed some air, so he accompanied her to the balcony. On the way home, he noticed the car was being followed, and he asked the driver to pull over because he wanted to walk. When he walked into the park, he called out to the person following him and promised not to hurt them if they left quietly. Instead of responding, the person channeled prana into their tag and attacked him. He did the same and fought back, but during the fight he realized his attacker was a woman. She powered up and attacked him again, but a memory slipped into his mind, and he blocked her attack with some kind of wind spell which pushed her back, causing her to give up and run away. Over the phone, Sir Edward told Tadanori that he had tested Morova's strength, and he had been disappointed, so he wasn't going to endorse him for rank S because he wasn't ready to become one. Morova had just gotten to his dorm after school and found Maya in his room only to find out she was his new roommate. He immediately told her to leave, but she assured him that her sister had been the one to approve her move, and while they slept, Morova prayed he wouldn't be accused of being a pedo. The next morning, Tadanori told Shizuno that she will be going overseas to study. Shizuno didn't like the idea, but he said the British headquarters needed a Kuroma, and since she had helped defeat the metaphysical, she would be a great addition to the team. This angered her, and she stood up immediately saying she wasn't going, but he told her that was the family's decision. On her way to school, she met up with Moroha, Satsuki, and Maya. Satsuki told her that the principal had moved Maya into Moroha's room, but he told them that he had no idea what was actually going on. Satsuki ran into the classroom and went to meet Moroha. She claimed that she had spoken to the principal about becoming his roommate, but she was refused. She revealed that she had no problem if he was cheating on her with another woman, but had a problem with him trying to replace her as his little sister. When she noticed Shizuno's empty desk, she asked him if he'd seen her, but before he could respond, Maya ran in and announced that there was a problem. At Shizuno's house, she was having lunch with Sir Edward and her brother, who was just telling Sir Edward that he was happy his sister was going to be under his care, when the butler informed him that Shizuno had a call from the school. When she went to take the call, she discovered it wasn't the principal but Moroha, who asked why she wasn't at school. She lied and said she was sick, but he told her if she didn't tell the truth he would come to her house. She then revealed that she was going to the UK to study. He asked if it was her choice to go there, and when she didn't reply, he told her to stop listening to her stupid brother, but she said she had to because she was bound by the family name. Before hanging up, she told him she would be fine and asked him not to worry. As the meal progressed, the butler came and informed her brother that someone was at the door, but he asked him to leave. Just before he stepped out of the room, Moroha burst through the window, so Tadanori threatened to have him arrested for breaking and entering. He ignored him and walked over to Sir Edward and admitted he was the one who had to destroy the metaphysical, and this made Shizuno call him a fool for throwing away his freedom. He claimed he didn't care about that, and even though he didn't remember his other life, she was still important to him. When he asked what she actually wanted, she admitted that she wanted to spend her life with him. Enraged, her brother tried to stop Moroha, but he jumped out the window with her in his arms and got into a waiting car. Tadanori then asked Sir Edward to stop them, but he said it would be a diplomatic issue if he intervened, so Tadanori managed to convince him by begging him to help out. Along the way, the car got attacked and Moroha barely managed to stop them from going off the road. Sir Edward and his assistant, Angela, jumped down and demanded they return Shizuno, but Moroha refused. Sir Edward then said if he had truly defeated the metaphysical, there would be no reason to take Shizuno aboard, but unfortunately, they had no proof. Moroha asked if defeating him would be enough proof for him, and Sir Edward gladly accepted the challenge. They soon began fighting, but Moroha was getting his ass handed to him in the worst ways possible. When he tried to use a spell, Sir Edward told him to give up and ended up breaking Moroha's sword while mocking him for losing. Just then Maya, who had followed them into the forest, created a barrier, and Moroha thanked her because he could finally go all out without worrying about anything. He manifested his prana and started casting again, while Edward wondered why he was repeating the same useless process that got him beat in the first place. Before he could attack him, Moroha blitzed past him, surprising him and caught off guard. He couldn't block Moroha's next attack, and his sword got broken in the process. Right before Moroha could deliver the final strike, he noticed another tag around Sir Edward's neck, which he immediately channeled prana into and donned a full body armor. Sir Edward applauded Moroha for being strong enough to push him to use this armor and then attacked him. This put him at an advantage, and he was able to push Moroha back. Cornered and about to lose, another memory slips into Moroha's mind, and he remembers a new spell. When he started chanting it, the girls who had been fighting Angela stopped and watched. Angela soon realized he was about to use a level 8 dark art. Shizuno, who knew what was going on, smiled and said he was chanting a curse that would change everything. This made Sir Edward happy, and when Moroha released the spell, it froze everything it came in contact with, and before it reached Sir Edward, he proclaimed Moroha as the lucky number 7, the newest member of the Six Heads. After the duel, they went to the principal's house, and while they were speaking, the doorbell rang. It was Sir Edward, and he had come to see Shizuno and Moroha. He accepted his defeat and allowed Shizuno to stay in Japan. He then told Moroha he was curious why he didn't move during their encounter at the cafe. So Moroha explained that he could tell he didn't have the intention to kill him because of how his prana looked. Sir Edward was impressed and announced that he had officially endorsed Moroha's promotion to rank S. 1 month after the duel between Sir Edward and Moroha, the school went on summer vacation while the strikers went to a summer training camp. On the day they left, they were transported by the principal, who used a teleportation spell, which Maya had explained could only be used once a day. At the beach, the students joked around with each other, and Satsuki had an accident which had her walking around topless shamelessly. This made Shizuno commend her for being one step ahead of her in their never-ending game of who gets to have Moroha's attention. They were joined by other students, including Maya, before Kanazaki decided it was a good time to harass Moroha. Before she could continue her less subtle attacks on Moroha's butt, Jin called their attention. He informed them that their training was going to be an individual effort, stating that they had to pick a challenge that they had to achieve by the end of the training camp before leaving them to their own devices. Satsuki immediately announced that her own goal was to become faster than Momo, but a surprised Momo awkwardly asked her to pick something else, and Satsuki teased her saying she was just scared of her promising future, while subtly pushing out her almost non-existent plots. Momo then revealed she didn't want her to fail at another thing in life, since she already failed in the melon department. When she eventually agreed to a race, Satsuki kept eating her dust. From the sidelines, Moroa wished her luck, but Shizuno and Maya said she was never going to win because Momo was way above her level. Moroa's phone rang, so he picked it up to discover it was Sir Edward on the line. He complained about having to work, while Moroa enjoyed his time at the beach with so many beautiful women. Moroa asked how long he'd been stalking his Instagram, as that was the only way to know what was going on with him. However, he claimed the principal had told him when he called her to make arrangements for a six heads meeting in his honor, and this surprised Moroa. Sir Edward offered to share all the details with him, but Moroa told him he wasn't interested and hung up. Immediately, he called back, whining like an attention-seeking girlfriend. After speaking with Sir Edward, Moroa told the girls and some other students that he was being endorsed as rank S, but the Russian terror was against it. Maya explained that it was dangerous to go against the Russian terror, because she'd heard from her sister that she was a scary person, and this made her blame herself for being the reason Moroa's true power was exposed. One night, Moroa and Satsuki went down to the beach, and there Satsuki begged him to help her train so she could become faster than Momo, but Moroa suggested she pick another challenge. She argued that she wanted to do this so she could be of help and not be the little sister that always got in the way like in her former life. Moroa tried to calm her down, and when she hugged him, he had a flashback of his former life and told her that he remembered a bit of his life as Fraga. He revealed he remembered always leaving to go to battle, while she always stayed behind. Satsuki explained that it was because she would get in the way, but he let her know it was actually to protect her from the problems that came with going to war. He then explained that it was the same reason he didn't want her challenging Momo, but she admitted that she had challenged her for selfish reasons. Since Momo was the only one who could match his speed, they always got paired together during training, and she didn't like it. So what better way to be closer to him than to become his training partner by besting Momo? Moved by her honesty and vulnerability, he agreed to help her. The students held a barbecue party, and everyone praised Satsuki's grilling skills. Momo asked if she had been practicing her cooking, and she said she had always wanted to cook for her brother, so she took the time to learn how to cook. Away from the noise, Moroa stood with a male student who congratulated him for being considered for rank S when Kame came up to them, saying he'd heard that Moroa's rank S promotion wasn't going to work and offered to let him become his minion, so he could learn from him, because it was the way things was meant to be. Kanazaki simply told Moroa to ignore the idiot because in his first year, he wasn't even close to half of what Moroa was. Later that night, Satsuki trained by running across water under Moroa's supervision. Before they left, she said she felt a strange presence coming from the direction of the sea, but Moroa claimed it was probably the cold weather that made her feel that way. 2 days before the end of the training camp, they went down to the beach to watch fireworks. Maya said that she liked fireworks because her sister used them to calm her down whenever she felt scared after awakening as a savior. The students fooled around and Satsuki set Kame's butt on fire. When he finally put out the fire, he asked Moroa to go get more fireworks. On his way, he met Shizuno, and she asked if she could go with him. Together, they sat on the sidewalk, and he apologized for not giving her enough of his time and said he'd love to bring his uncle and auntie with him next time. Shizuno promised she would come along with him, and he freaked out when she hinted at him introducing her as his girlfriend. When the six heads gathered for a meeting to discuss Moroa's promotion to rank S, the chiefs of the Russian and French HQ voted against it. The Chinese chief didn't give two shits, while the US chief claimed they had nothing to gauge his power with. The Japanese chief explained that Moroa had single-handedly defeated a metaphysical with 9 heads, but the French chief asked for proof. When Sir Edward tried to assure them that he could prove Moroa deserved the promotion, Ando, the chief of the Japan HQ, suddenly clutched his chest in pain and said that a metaphysical had appeared right before the alarms in the rooms went off. At the training camp, the strikers watched the live broadcast of the metaphysical that had appeared. They were astonished by its size, and Jin said the six heads had declared it a fortress class. He calculated that with its speed, it would reach the island in an hour, but they were not allowed to engage it. With the head of the Japan branch away, they couldn't risk going to fight something they were unfamiliar with. He ordered them to go back to their rooms and pack up their belongings and get ready to leave along with the islanders who were already evacuating. Kame was the first to leave after making up an excuse about a stomach ache, and needing to see a doctor, while Satsuki was hesitant, but Moroha told her to just do as they had been told. Meanwhile, at the British HQ, the Russian terror told Ando not to return to Japan. The American chief revealed that they couldn't defeat the metaphysical without the help of the six heads, so her suggestion made no sense. She reminded them that the so-called rank S was in Japan, and so he should be the one to handle it and prove himself. The French chief agreed with her and used a spell to put Ando to sleep, making sure that he wouldn't leave. At that point, Sir Edward could only hope Moroha would be able to handle the situation. On the island, the last of the islanders were boarding the evacuation ships, but Moroha, Satsuki, Shizuno, and Maya all stayed behind. Just when they thought they were the last ones left, Jin joined them. While they tried to come up with a plan, they were interrupted by the rest of the strikers, who claimed they had missed their boat and decided to help out. They came up with an attack plan and lured it to where they intended to attack it from using the sound of sirens. When it got close to the port, it stopped moving, and they thought their plan would fail until they saw fireworks shooting up in its direction. It turned out Kame used the sound of the fireworks to lure it to land and got it in position, allowing the others to begin attacking it. The Kuromas casted spells which they used to destroy its legs, and when the metaphysical released some ugly-looking bugs as a sort of defense mechanism, the Shiroganes fought them off. Jin attacked the creature from its left flank and managed to destroy its leg, after which he called out to Moroha, who first blasted music through some speakers and drew the creature's attention to him. Moroha charged at it with full speed, and using the Black Gehenna spell he had used against the multi-headed snake, he cut off its arm. He landed on the ground in front of it, and when it tried to squash him with its other arm, he barely managed to block it. On the other side of the island, the Kuromas kept launching spells at the creature, while the Shirogane kept fighting off the smaller bugs. Meanwhile, Kanzaki used it as an opportunity to vent her anger and frustration for not being able to make Moroha hers during their training, even if she tried to get him in bed multiple times. Jin had just cut off one of the hind legs when Momo came to report how the strikers were faring. Before they could leave to allow Moroha finish it off, the creature laughed in a very disturbing manner, and more faces appeared on its back. Realizing it was multi-headed, Jin ordered an immediate retreat. The creature suddenly released an extremely powerful sonic attack that knocked most of the strikers out, because their protective spells were useless against it. Moroha was the only one that managed to tank the attack, and with most of them injured, there was no one to fight off the bugs, so Satsuki asked those who could still move to take the injured to safety and charged at the bugs with full strength, releasing more of her prana. Momo ran over to Moroha and told him what was going on, so he told her to get back to the others so he could finish off the creature somehow. As he wondered how he could defeat the creature, he suddenly had flashes of his other former life, and suddenly remembered a spell. He started running around on its back, carving the symbol he needed to activate the spell. Momo came back to help him fight off the bugs so he could concentrate, and as he ran he called out to Satsuki and told her to take cover. Upon hearing his words, she fainted and Momo ran to help her. With everyone under the barrier Maya had created, he activated the spell which made the creature explode. Back at the British HQ, Ando woke up as the beast exploded and praised Moroha's efforts. The Russian terror and the French chief weren't happy about it, but the American chief claimed that he had earned his position as rank S without a doubt. To please everyone, Sir Edward suggested they still treat him as a student and put him on probation until he graduates. Meanwhile, Maya helped heal the injuries of the strikers while Moroha and Satsuki sat close to the sea. Moroha mentioned he was tired, and she pulled his head down to relax. Shizuno joined them and claimed she had better pillows, and the girls started bickering. Moroha, who was stuck between them, complained that he felt uncomfortable, which made Shizuno point out he needed something more than wood if he wanted to rest well, and pulled into her chest. They both start pulling him back and forth until Maya and some other students walk up to them. They praised Maya for helping to heal them, and Raimi asked if they had seen his awesome display earlier. Moroha asked where he had been, and Kanzaki explained that he had fainted and missed the entire battle. She then pulled Moroha to her chest, declaring that she'd be his new pillow, but Jin pulled her away and scolded her while everyone laughed. Days later, Moroha met up with a silver-haired girl after he found a letter in his locker, asking him to meet behind the gym. He recognized the girl as the new Russian exchange student and asked if she'd sent the letter to lure him into a trap, but she claimed it wasn't a trap and that she wanted to confess her love to him. He believed he was hearing things when she asked him to become her boyfriend. Moroha told her to slow down, because he wasn't an average simp who said yes to every woman who wanted him. The rejection only made her look more desperate, and because he was such a gentleman, he told her they could be friends. Later on in the classroom, the same girl was introduced to the class as Elena Arshavina. Satsuki asked why she wasn't answering her father's name like all Russians did, so Elena explained that she had no parents. Shizuno was the next person to question her, and she wasted no time in asking if Elena had ulterior motives for joining their school. Unfazed by her rudeness and icy behavior, Alina said her only motive was to become Moroha's woman, and that she had already confessed her love to him. This had Satsuki springing out of her seat and rushing towards Alina, as she announced no one was allowed near her brother without her permission. When Alina called her cute, Satsuki forgot her anger for a moment until Shizuno coughed, which made her reveal that her flattery won't work on her. Alina then begged her to let her date Moroha, but Shizuno stepped in and demanded to know what Alina loved about Moroha, so she said she fell in love at first sight. However, Satsuki claimed she probably stole the lame line from a shitty rom-com. Meanwhile, the male students were praising Moroha, who has now become a chick magnet thanks to his overpowered res, but Moroha looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him up. That evening at the arena, 2 members of the Strikers team were dueling while the rest stood back and watched. The female striker Sophie tried to jump out of the way, but Taki, the male striker, pulled her back down. He tried to attack while she sat on the ground, but she used her plots to repel the attack. Although Satsuki was surprised, Moroha explained that she actually used her adamant to harden her skin. While Satsuki and Kame were arguing over who would win, Momo slid up beside Moroha and shyly asked if it was true that he and Alina were dating. He denied it and asked how she'd heard, and Maya claimed it was all anyone was talking about. The principal found this amusing and claimed young people always found love easily, while she asked all of them to be friends with Alina and make her feel welcomed. Satsuki drew their attention back to the duel where Taki had set up a trap using an ancient light art. Sophie was impressed and boosted her prana while she walked through the lines, but Taki turned red as he watched her and tried not to look at her. Sophie mocked him, thinking he was upset because the trap didn't work, but he told her to look down, and that was when the clueless girl noticed that the sharp line had cut her clothes to pieces. Embarrassed, she used all her strength to slap Taki and sent him flying across the arena. With training over, they headed home and met Alina, who asked Moroha to go on a date with her, but Satsuki protested and said the only way he'd go is if she and Shizuno came along. However, Shizuno declined, saying she had other commitments to fulfill. The next day, Moroha was waiting for Satsuki and Alina, who were both running late. Alina soon arrived dressed as a cat and trying to act all cute and innocent. He told her she looked ridiculous, and she was so embarrassed she wanted to drop dead. As Moroha tried to brighten mood, Satsuki called to tell him that she couldn't make it because she was helping Sophie out at a soup kitchen. Alina eventually took off the embarrassing outfit, and they started their date. He first took her to eat, and while they ate, she revealed that the Russian branch trained saviors, like the military, and put them in combat early. She asked if he too thought she had transferred schools to assassinate him, and he said no, which surprised her, and she told him he reminded her of Sir Edward, which made him scream in frustration. They went to the mall where Alina tried to kiss him when they were taking pictures, but he pushed her away. At the cinema, she sat in his lap, and when he placed her on a chair, she held his thighs, making him freeze up. Meanwhile, Shizuno called Angela and asked what she knew about Alina. Angela told her to be careful because she was known as the man-eater. Meanwhile, Alina and Moroha's date ended at the park, and as they watched a child play with his father, Moroha revealed that it reminded him of when he used to play with his uncle. She asked why he hadn't played with his father, so he told her his father was dead. He revealed that they were similar in that way since they were both orphans but had other family members, and in her case, she had her brother. Moroha mentioned he'd like to meet her brother, while she said she'd like to meet his aunt and uncle. That night, a crow who Alina referred to as Kondrad came to her and reported that their plans were working perfectly. Apparently, she had been sent to Japan to get closer to Moroha, because his one weakness was those he was closest to. They knew she was no match for Moroha, and the only way to have an advantage over him was to become one of his weaknesses. Alina didn't really seem to like the plan, but it reminded her that if she succeeded, he would allow her to spend time with her brother. At school the next day, she found a letter in her locker which asked her to meet up with Shizuno at night in the park. Shizuno told her that the letter had been an invitation to a duel, and when Alina asked why she wanted to fight her, Shizuno claimed she knew that she was the man-eater, the Russian savior-killing savior. When Alina said nothing, Shizuno pulled her tag and manifested her prana. She used freezing shade to attack her, but Alina blocked the attack and repelled it. Shizuno used the same attack again, but Alina hid behind a tree and found an opportunity to attack her from behind. Before the knife could touch her, Shizuno's staff manifested into an ice dragon and knocked it out of the way. It attacked Alina and managed to back her into a corner. Alina had no other choice but to channel prana into her tag, and when Shizuno used another spell against her, she absorbed it. She shot spell after spell, all of which Alina absorbed. And when the ice dragon tried attacking again, she destroyed it. Finally reaching Shizuno, she held her sword to her throat and told her to make sure she kept her mouth shut about what she knew, and Shizuno asked what would happen if she didn't. She promised to kill her the next time she challenged her, but just then a teacher approached them, so she ran off into the night. After hearing from Maya that she was suspended, Moroha went to visit Shizuno only to find out she had an injured leg. Shizuno spilled the beans about Alina's true identity to him, and told him what happened between them the night before. He got mad at her for being so reckless and getting herself injured, so she apologized but begged him to be careful around Alina. Morova claimed that he didn't think Alina was a threat because she seemed like a good person to him. Meanwhile, an injured Alina was woken by Kondrat, who had taken the form of a cat. He asked why she didn't finish off Shizuno when she had the chance, reminding her that failure to complete the mission meant she couldn't see her brother again. Just then a knock came from the door, so she let Kondrat out through the back door and went to see who was at her door. She realized it was Morova and Satsuki and pretended not to be home. But they went around the back and Satsuki scolded her for ignoring them. Inside the house, Morova tended to her injured leg while Satsuki prepared some food. They ended up spending the day with her, and at night Morova stayed to watch over her. For the next few days, until she was fully healed, Morova and his friends took turns watching over her and helping her out. On the day Sophie looked after her, she told her that she planned on joining the Japanese branch after her graduation, and asked Alina to consider joining too. That was when Alina realized that she'd become too comfortable and was neglecting her responsibilities. So when Morova came in, she asked if they could go on a date the next day. The next day, Morova and Alina went to an amusement park for their date. When they got there, Morova joked about Alina not clinging to his side this time around, but instead of answering, she took off her tag and manifested her prana, revealing what he already knew about her, and declared she was going to end him. Meanwhile, outside the park, Shizuno and Satsuki had just arrived, but before they could go in, Sophie stepped out and blocked their path. Satsuki tried to explain the situation, but Shizuno figured out that the American branch wanted Morova to get rid of the man-eater, so they didn't have to. Satsuki told Shizuno to go in and challenge Sophie to a duel. Back inside, as Morova defended against Alina's attacks, he commented on how strong she was. When he tried to boost his prana, she shocked him by absorbing it, making him jump back. He casted a fire spell which she easily deflected. He then noticed his sword had changed colors and wondered if it was an effect of the magic sword. She attacked him again, and while he was defending himself, he realized she was gaining the upper hand, so he used his prana to give himself more strength and pushed her back. This gave him the opportunity to boost his prana for an all-out attack, but she absorbed his prana before he could finish. She then closed the distance and kicked him in the chest. Morova held on to the spot she'd kicked and asked why she didn't slash him. Back outside, Sophie and Shizuno were still going at it, and Sophie acknowledged Shizuno's strength and decided to get serious. Inside, Morova was defending against Alina's attacks when she asked why he didn't use his prana to boost his attacks, but he explained it was because he'd struggled so much at first. Immediately, he had a flashback of his past life and remembered something. He then took a stance and asked Alina to come at him. Although she moved at an incredible speed, he easily dodged and slashed her side. The fight between Satsuki and Sophia had become intense, and Satsuki noticed that Sophie's weapon was falling apart. Sophie told her that she hasn't found a weapon that could withstand the power of her prana yet. She managed to disarm Satsuki, but she quickly used adamant and blocked Sophie's attack. She boosted her prana and Sophie's weapon was completely destroyed. Sophie admitted her defeat and told her to keep up the good work. Meanwhile, inside the park, Morova had gained the upper hand but gave Alina a chance to fight back, so she got up and blabbed about defeating him. He asked if it was because her brother would die if she didn't kill him, but she didn't respond, so he told her that he would help her rescue her brother and set her free. She said it was impossible, but he revealed he'll do anything to help her. Shizuno soon arrived, and she told Alina that she had no reason to fight, because she didn't actually have a brother. She had heard from the institute director that Alina had been dropped at their door as a newborn, so it wasn't possible for her to have a younger brother. Alina didn't believe her, so Shizuno asked her if she could remember her brother's name or his face, but she couldn't. That was when Kondrat made his presence known and confirmed what Shizuno said as the truth. He admitted that he had planted the illusion that she had a brother. This made Alina feel lost, so Kondrat used the opportunity to take over her body. He attacked Morova and laughed, because he knew that he would not want to hurt Alina. Morova managed to boost his prana and break Alina's sword before slashing her, and succeeding in separating Kondrat from Alina's body. When she fell, he picked her up, promising to be her family. Meanwhile, Kondrat made it back to the Russian HQ, but had his eyes removed by the terror for failing his mission. Alina met Morova outside her house one morning while she was trying to leave. She asked how he knew she'd try to leave, and he said he just had a feeling. Alina said she didn't want to involve him in her problems and thank him for his help. As she tried to walk past him, he hugged her and used a spell to put her to sleep. The love-struck fool then called Sir Edward and told him that he planned to go to war with the Russian branch alone. Soon, Morova confronted Bernard, one of the Russian field chiefs, on an empty bridge in Russia. He asked the man for the location of the terror, but as expected, he refused to disclose her location. When he learns of Morova's identity, he vows to defeat the fraud as rancor. He manifested his prana and tried to attack Morova, who easily dodged and jumped onto one of the pillars supporting the bridge. He remembered a spell he used in his former life and chanted it. When Bernard heard his chant, he shouted at him to stop, but Morova didn't listen and released the thunderstorm helix on him, knocking him out. Angela, who stood beside Morova, asked if he wasn't going to finish him off, but he said he had no plans of spilling blood during his solo war. Later, while they sat in a train, Angela explained it'll be a disaster if people learned Britain was helping him fight against Russia, complained of the consequences of people finding out that Britain was helping him carry out a private war on the Russian. However, Moroa assured her that no one would find out. She then asked what he meant by not killing anyone, so he recalled his talk with Bernard. After they had caught on the bridge, Bernard had told him he had no idea where the terror was, but Moroa already expected that, so he asked if Bernard would like to report to the terror that he was waging war against them. Angela asked why he was sharing information with his enemy, and he said it was a waste of time to interrogate anyone. Bernard mocked him, saying that the Japanese were weak, so Moroa stabbed him. With a crazed look in his eye, he told Bernard that in his former life he fought and won battles alone, so he had no right to call his people weak. He then kicked him to the ground before leaving. Back in the present, Moroa explained that since he had no idea where the terror was, he'd just keep beating up her field chiefs until she made a move. That way, he didn't have to kill them, even if it meant they would be punished for losing to him. Meanwhile, Bernard managed to free himself and went to report what had happened to the terror. He asked her to allow him take Moroa down with him since he was going to die anyway, but she refused, saying she did not tolerate failure and told him to die. As his final act of service, he told her that Moroa didn't finish him off despite using his thunderstorm helix, and this made her praise him for his loyalty. Finally, she used her thunderbolt dragon spell to send him to the afterlife. The terror then spoke to the 3 field chiefs with her and told them not to do anything, even though Bernard had told them where Moroa was going next. She told them to strengthen their defenses around the capital instead. In the train, Moroa complained about sharing a cabin with Angela, and she teased him, saying he just couldn't handle a real woman, and offered to cuddle with him. The shameless virgin boy immediately accepted, so she called him a creep, telling him to stay on his own side of the cabin and make sure he respected her privacy. Over in Japan, Satsuki was arguing with Elena, who told her she was going to become Moroa's sister because he had told her they were family. Shizuno asked them to shut up and stop acting like immature children. Shizuno revealed she had no plans on helping someone like her, and this only made Satsuki laugh. Tired of their foolish behavior, Shizuno informed them that Moroa would be ashamed if he saw their behavior, reminding them that he was fighting a war all on his own. Outside, they met Maya, and as the girls talked, they admitted they were worried about Moroa and prayed he'd come back unharmed. True to his word, Moroa went from city to city, suppressing each branch. On their last stop, they noticed they were being followed, so Moroa left Angela and lured them into a forest. One of the chiefs revealed himself and told Moroa he was surrounded by rank saviors and wouldn't be able to escape. However, Moroa revealed that he had plot armor. The field chief then begged him to surrender and go home, because he knew that if they fought, Moroa would take most of them down. He said he didn't want to disobey the terror's orders, but if he could avoid bloodshed by not fighting, he would gladly do it. His pathetic peace talk made one of his comrades to shut him up and carry out the command they had been given and kill Moroa. As soon as he jumped, his comrades hiding in the bushes fired a freezing shade spell at Moroa, but he jumped out of the way. Just then, a set of twins jumped out from behind the bushes and tried to attack him, but he blocked their attacks easily. As he tried to explain that he wasn't the one who had killed Bernard, he noticed a fireball that had been shot in their direction. Realizing the twins would be hit, he pushed them out of the way and jumped before it could hit him. As he wondered if the twins were okay, he noticed he was being surrounded by a poison mist and used a breeze blade to blow it away before he knocked the guy who had released it out. Before he could catch a breath, he was attacked again, this time from above. He followed the person and knocked him out of the sky using a breeze blade, and he landed on 2 of his comrades. Moroa soon found another one of them, and this time a young woman, and asked why she had reduced the impact of the freezing shade. Instead of answering, she asked him why he had saved the twins, but he just told he didn't like people dying. Just then he heard the twins, so he flicked her forehead and ran off. The twins tried to attack him again, but he easily knocked them out. The last person, who was already fighting Angela and Moroa, asked why she was there, so she explained that she wasn't his servant and told him she'd take care of the guy. The guy then turned around, and on his back was a transmission mirror, and on the other side of the mirror was the terror. Moroa realized she was chanting a spell and pushed Angela out of the way, but before he could move too, he was hit by the spell. Moroa woke up to Angela's bare chest in his face. Trying not to panic and cause a disturbance, he tried to remember what happened. That's when he realized his clothes were gone as well, but Angela could care less as she almost used her milkers to suffocate him. His desperate screams and movements finally woke her up, and she was happy he was finally awake. He then mentioned that her bare plots were in his face, and that's when she realized what was happening. She screamed and jumped off the bed, and quickly put on her underwear. She then explained that she had carried him back after the terror's spell had injured him, and the only way to heal him was to lay next to him naked. Just then the girl Moroa had flicked on the forehead walked in, and the 2 of them tried to explain their situation. Fully dressed, They listened to what the girl had to say as she introduced herself as Katya. Angela asked how she found them, and she explained she had someone follow them all the way from the station. She claimed that Morova's unwillingness to kill anyone was the reason she had come to them, as she needed his help to free her friend Yuri from the terror. On a train headed to the terror's location, Katya told them that the terror made the saviors fight amongst themselves and pick the winners as her bodyguards. When they got to the station, Morova flicked Katya on the head, knocking her out, and explained to Angela that he didn't want her caught in the middle of the war. As they walked together, Morova asked Angel not to come along with him because he didn't want her to get hurt, since he couldn't protect her while fighting the terror. At the terror's mansion, one of the field chiefs who had fought Morova came to report that Morova's weakness was the fact that he was unwilling to kill anyone. As he tried to explain why he had come back, she cut him short, saying that as long as he had failed his mission he had to die, and she motioned to the guards to take him away. She stepped outside and noticed Morova had arrived, and as a welcome gift she casted a level 13 dark art spell called Curse Crusade, which released an army of lightning. Morova easily fought them off, which surprised the terror, and even one of her guards mentioned that he moved as if he was accustomed to fighting whole armies alone. She then decided to up her game and sent in the saviors under her command. Morova realized they were the captured saviors Katya had told him about, and when they tried to attack him, he easily dodged, but one of them was attacked by one of the lightning lions and Morova saved him. As she watched him save them, even if they wanted to kill him, she confirmed what she'd been told about his unwillingness to kill anyone. Morova suddenly felt heavy and realized that one of the saviors was using gravity restraint against him, giving the others an opportunity to attack him. But before they could, Angela arrived and saved him. Katya was also with her, which was surprising that they made it so fast. He tried to speak but was interrupted by Shizuno and Satsuki's arrival via Mary's transportal gate. Elena was the last to arrive, and she tried to talk the saviors out of fighting for the terror. But as she noticed Katya trying to get Yuri to remember her, she quickly went behind her and cut the black crystal she was wearing, causing her to come to her senses. So with the saviors on their side now, they fought off the remaining lightning army. Seeing that her army was losing, the terror used another spell and created a lightning giant. They attacked it with everything they had, and even the combined spells of Shizuno, Katya, and Morova wasn't enough to take it down. The giant threw a large lightning ball at them, which they managed to dodge. But when it was about to fire a second one, another memory was triggered in Morova, and he started chanting. Shizuno recognized it as a level 13 dark art spell, and when he unleashed it, the whole area was covered in water. Morova stood about it and tapped his foot twice, making the water come up like tentacles that wrapped around the giant, completely destroying it. Refusing to accept defeat, she used a Thunderbolt Dragon spell to attack, but he easily destroyed it. Seeing that she was defeated, the ugly hag begged Morova to spare her life, saying she didn't want to lose her empire, but he told her that if she didn't want anyone taking what belonged to her, she shouldn't take what belonged to others. He then turned his back on her and walked away. Morova was getting scolded by Angela, who said that the spell he had used had caused the Russian map to be redrawn, so he apologized. When he asked why he was in the same sauna as the girls, Angela called him a fool and said he was ignorant of other people's customs. Katya asked them to calm down and let it slip that they were once naked together. This made the girls jealous, and Shizuno asked for an explanation. After listening to her, Satsuki and Alina got into a fight about who was the best sister. To settle the argument, they decided to see who would leave the sauna first after adding water to the coals and increasing the temperature. Yuri and Katya were the first to leave. Angela soon followed, leaving Morova and Shizuno to deal with the two immature brats that had started doing exercises. They soon moved on to arm wrestling, and Satsuki won. But it didn't take long for Elena to pass out due to the extreme heat, and Satsuki followed. Shizuno decided to wake them up by using a freeze spell, which left them both with a serious cold. As they warmed up by the fire, Morova and Shizuno sat outside talking. He revealed that it had been quiet with only him and Angela, and admitted it was a nice thing to have his crazy girls around again. He then told Shizuno that he had a dream of his past lives, and in the dream, something kept taking what he loved the most, so she assumed it might not have been a memory of his past, and it could have just been a dream or a future premonition, but that only left him more worried. In the Japan HQ, Sir Edward and Ando were discussing Morova's victory against the Russian terror when Ando suddenly groaned in pain and said a metaphysical had appeared. Morova and the girls had just bid Katya and Yuri goodbye, and were about to go back home using Mary's transportal when Morova got a phone call. The girls returned to the academy when a sad Maya asked why Morova wasn't with them. Satsuki explained a metaphysical had appeared right before they left, and since Morova had defeated the only person who could take it down, he stayed back to help them out. Later on the rooftop, Satsuki tried to cheer Maya up, and she admitted that since Morova left, she'd been feeling alone and cried herself to sleep most nights. Satsuki then invited her to sleep in her room, but told her she might not make a good substitute. Elsewhere, Angela was on the phone with Sir Edward, who informed her of Ando's condition. He said that even though Moroha had defeated the metaphysical, Ando was still in pain and had been admitted because he passed out. He then told her to remain at the school, just in case something happened. As promised, Maya went to Satsuki's room to spend the night. Just as Satsuki was telling her that Moroha would be back soon, a knock sounded at the door. She opened it and saw Momo. She said she had come to keep Maya company too, but then another knock came and Shizuno came in saying that although she slept in luxury, she had no problem experiencing poverty once in a while. Another knock came and one after the other their friends came because they wanted to make Maya feel better. They ended up having a sleepover, and when everyone had settled down to sleep, Maya and Satsuki lay awake, and Maya said she didn't feel lonely anymore. Suddenly, Satsuki felt a chill, and when Maya asked what was wrong, she said it was nothing. Meanwhile, Ando's assistant came to get Sir Edward as Ando woke up and managed to inform them that an ancient dragon was coming. A portal opened up in the sky, and out of it came a big dragon, and as it destroyed the city, an evacuation order was issued. While the strikers geared up and prepared to go fight it, Jin informed them that Ando was hospitalized and couldn't fight. He revealed that Sir Edward was making his way to them, and that the principal was going to find where to stay until she could activate the transport to bring Moroha back. Angela also came and asked to join the fight. Their attack plan was to ambush the dragon, so they spread around the forest surrounding the school. As they waited, Shizuno noticed its smile and told them to clear out, because it had seen through their plans. It flew up into the clouds and came back down breathing fire and burnt the forest, so they had to clear out to avoid the flames. Momo and Satsuki were running side by side, and when the dragon noticed them, it came after Satsuki. Although they increased their speed, she ended up falling, but before it could attack, Kanazaki hit it with a spell. She then ordered the Kuromas to hit it with every powerful spell they had, and as they launched their attacks, it nullified the spells and used them against them, so everyone took cover. In Russia, Moroha could only watch what was going on through the satellite footage. He recognized the dragon from his dreams, and suddenly remembered it was the one that had taken his loved ones in his past lives. The saviors continued their fight against the dragon, but it continued to take the upper hand against them. Mary begins the spell to open the transportal gate and bring Moroha back, but before she finishes, Jin manages to jump onto the dragon's back and tries to stab it, but it flies through a building and he is knocked off. It circles back and tries to burn him, but Kanzaki blocks it using a defense spell. It then uses another spell to create a massive fireball. Jin pulls Kanzaki, and together they move out of the way so Satsuki screams at them, which makes the dragon notice her. It starts shooting fireballs at her, so Momo runs to her but is hit. Just as Mary is about to complete the transportal spell, she notices a burning building about to fall on Maya, so she moves just in time and pushes her out of the way but is injured in the process. She asked Maya to restart the chant and open the gate before she passed out. As she begins chanting, the dragon notices her and tries to attack, but Sir Edward blocks the attack, allowing her to finish the chant and opening the gate that allowed Moroha, Katjit, and Yuri to pass through. However, she immediately notices that something is wrong. Angela mentions that the dragon is not an ordinary metaphysical, and Shizuno points out with its power, it could have already destroyed everything, but it was as if it was stalling and waiting for something. Meanwhile, Satsuki tries to lure the dragon away from an injured Elena, and just as it's about to hit her with the fireball it shot, someone deflects it. She turns around and seeing Moroha walking towards her, Jin orders the savior to lend Moroha a hand, but he tells them that it was his fight and says they should leave. He charges at the dragon, chanting a Black Gehenna spell, which he releases, but the dragon nullifies it. Shizuno shouts out that spells were ineffective against it, and he decides to use prana instead, so he boosts his prana and attacks. The dragon counters and releases a sonic attack, which Kanazaki recognized as the one used by the fortress class. Moroha fell to the ground, and when he tried to stand, the dragon opened its mouth and the same bugs the fortress class had came out and attacked him. Jin wondered how he would defeat a creature that had all the powers of the metaphysicals he had already defeated. Satsuki tried to help out, but Shizuno stopped her, saying the dragon had been waiting for Moroha to arrive. With Moroha occupied fighting the bugs, the dragon flew into the clouds and suddenly appeared behind Shizuno and Satsuki. Before they could react, it turned them to stone. Moroha screamed in pain and remembered all his past lives and how